Title: The Nebula's Wound. Description: humans survived where gods fell. In a nebula that broke ancient powers, our unpredictability is our only weapon. Hashtag HFY, hashtag sci-fi, hashtag war. The silence in the cockpit was a physical thing, a pressure that made Elara's teeth ache. Outside the reinforced viewport, the nebula churned, a bruise of violet and sickly green across the black canvas of space. It was called the Wound, and for good reason. Something ancient and terrible had happened here, a cataclysm that had shattered civilizations and left only ghosts. Elara's ship, the Stalwart, was one of those ghosts, scavenging in the debris of dead gods. Her fingers danced across the console, rerouting power from the life support to the sensors. Every watt saved was another second of life. The ship groaned, a sound like a dying animal, and a flicker of warning lit up the screen. They were not alone. The Stalwart was not the only rat in the ruins. Captain Rodek's knuckles were white on the arms of his command chair. The bridge of the Resolute was a tomb, lit only by the cold glow of holographic displays. "Report," he barked, his voice raw. The comm officer, a kid named Finn, didn't look up from his console. "Still nothing from the Stalwart, sir. They're deep in the debris field. Too much interference." Rodek slammed his fist on the console. "They're not answering because they're dead. Or worse." He knew the Wound was a trap, a tomb for the unwary. But the Resolute had no choice. The fleet was gone, swallowed by the nebula's silence. All that remained was the Resolute, and the hope that Elara had found something, anything, to keep them alive. The swarm came without warning. One moment, the sensors showed nothing but static and dust. The next, the viewport was obscured by a writhing mass of chitin and wings. They called themselves the Hive, a collective consciousness that saw the universe as a resource to be consumed. The Stalwart shuddered as the first impact hit. Elara cursed and yanked the controls, sending the ship into a chaotic spin. The Hive didn't fight like any enemy she'd ever seen. There was no strategy, only hunger. They swarmed, a tide of razor-sharp limbs and acid spit, their minds linked in a single, screaming purpose: destroy. "Brace for impact," Rodek roared as the Resolute lurched. On the main screen, the Hive was a black cloud swallowing stars. They'd followed the Stalwart's signal, drawn by the same desperation that had led Rodek into the Wound. The ship's cannons fired, but the lasers scattered uselessly against the swarm. "They're adapting," Finn yelled. "They're learning." Rodek stared at the screen, his mind racing. The Hive was a perfect weapon, a single-minded engine of destruction. But it had one weakness. It thought in straight lines. And humans, as Rodek knew all too well, did not. Elara slammed the Stalwart into a derelict dreadnought, the impact jarring every bone in her body. The Hive swarmed the wreckage, their mandibles clicking in anticipation. But Elara wasn't trying to escape. She was buying time. With a flick of her wrist, she ejected the ship's power core. It spun into the swarm, a tiny, fragile thing. For a second, nothing happened. Then, with a silent flash, it detonated. The explosion wasn't large, but it was enough. The Hive, drawn to the energy, swarmed the blast site, their collective mind momentarily blinded by the chaos. Elara didn't hesitate. She fired the thrusters, the Stalwart lurching away as the Hive turned on itself, confused and enraged. Rodek watched the explosion on the screen, a grim smile touching his lips. "She did it," he murmured. "The crazy bastard actually did it." The Hive was in disarray, their perfect coordination shattered by Elara's gambit. It was a small victory, but it was enough. "All hands," Rodek said, his voice steady. "We're going in. The Resolute is going to be a needle in a haystack. And we're going to make sure the haystack burns." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but none of them argued. They were all that was left, and the Wound wasn't going to claim them without a fight. The Resolute plunged into the heart of the swarm, its cannons blazing. Rodek had ordered every weapon system to be jury-rigged, modified to fire in unpredictable patterns. Lasers flickered in wild arcs, missiles detonated prematurely, and the ship's own hull was rigged to emit electromagnetic pulses. It was chaos. Beautiful, beautiful chaos. The Hive, used to order, recoiled. Their collective mind couldn't process the randomness. They swarmed, but their movements were clumsy, their coordination broken. Finn cheered as a volley of modified plasma bolts tore through a cluster of the enemy. They're breaking. They're actually breaking. Elara watched the battle from the Stalwart's cockpit, her breath catching in her throat. The Resolute was a beacon of madness in the sea of the hive. It wasn't fighting smart. It was fighting human. Unpredictable, messy, and utterly terrifying. The hive was reeling, their perfect hive mind fracturing under the assault. But Elara knew it wasn't enough. The swarm was too vast, too relentless. The Resolute was buying time, but time was running out. With a final, desperate decision, Elara rerouted the Stalwart's remaining power to the engines. "Forgive me," she whispered, and aimed the ship straight at the hive's core. The last thing she saw was the swarm parting before her, a maw of teeth and wings waiting to consume them all. The universe held its breath. And then, there was only fire.